Assalamu alaikum. Hello there. What about you? Bonjour mon ami. And welcome to Are You Not Entertained? The interviews. This time concentrating on the arts, because that's what we do here. We like to mix it up once in a while. And I'm speaking to two wonderful ladies, both directors of two brand new documentaries you can look up anytime now. The first, I speak to the director, Eva Fuentes, the director of Goodbye Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazarus. Now, you might not know that name, but you may know the song if you're a big movie buff like me from The Silence of the Lambs. When you hear it in the trailer I'm about to play, you will go, ah, that one. Yes, indeed. And I spoke to the director about how this documentary took many twists and turns as it came to be and became a what if and one that had a sad yet hopeful ending. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with her. You can support the movie itself, goodbyehorsesmovie.com, if you are a Q Lazarus fan, and I think by the end of the interview, you will be. Next, I speak to Catherine Goon, the director of Meanwhile, a docu-poem in 6 verses about artists breathing through the chaos. And this interview really speaks for itself. I can't wait to share it with you. And you can share all my interviews for Are You Not Entertained? Brought to you by cinemascholars.com, the movie site by movie fans for movie fans, where you can find all my interviews in fine print. Also, please support Entertainment on all our social media platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Insta, we're on Facebook, we are on X, we're everywhere. Do check us out, Cinema Scholars and Entertainment. You will find everything you need for the world of geekdom, for movies, for news, for gaming. It's all there between us. And of course, follow me as well on IG at Dower Film Doha. And if you're listening on YouTube, please follow, please comment, please subscribe, please share as well if you're listening on Spotify. I really appreciate your time now, and I really appreciate your support. So please share it around. It's for the good of everyone. But enough from me. So here is the trailer for Goodbye Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazarus.
When you go after your dream, there's nothing like it. It's good times and it's bad times, but there's nothing like it. I became a taxi driver because of my lifestyle, but I was going to sing.
Now here we are in the club area, and on my left-hand side I have our resident Dome Svengali, Q Lazarus, who also contributed to the soundtrack of that much-acclaimed movie, Silence of the Lambs.
Jonathan walked in and he told me that he met you when she was driving and said, "You got to hear this, Eddie," and it was Goodbye Horses.
Hi, Eva. How are you, ma'am?
Good. How are you?
I'm really, really good. Thank you for your time today. Talking about wild horses. No, I went into the movie coming off another musical documentary based on the work of Jim Morrison. I naively went into it thinking, okay, this is a really cool music documentary. I'm going to get a bit of a bio. It's going to be about conspiracy. It's going to be this and that. But no. So I was watching it in my home, in my bed specifically, headphones on, my wife next to me watching her terrible Netflix shows. And after 6 minutes, there's Q. And I literally went, she's there already? This is her? Wow. So we're right into it. But did you ever think of playing with the whole, we'll give a bit of a bio, we'll give a bit of a mystery, and then maybe half the way through, 2/3 the way through, we'll get Q? Or was it always your plan to have her front and center 5 minutes in?
I don't know what I did want there to be mystery at the beginning. You know, I did want to because she's not a household name, but people who are fans of hers are very obsessed with her, and she definitely has a cult following. So I wanted to make it clear to new audiences, people who weren't familiar with her, you know, given the intro of who she was, what she was known for, and all the mystery around her disappearance. But I didn't know what, you know, I don't know what I would have filled the first half of the film with if it wasn't with her. You know, what's really interesting, I think, in the film is her telling not only the story of her 10 years where she was making music in the United States and England, but, you know, the reasons behind her disappearance, which were very dramatic. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of, it's her telling the story of her life and in what wound up being very much like a cradle to grave biography. And I think one of the things that sets it apart from other music docs is only part of it's really about music. And she opened up to me and tells stories and shows a vulnerability, and there's an intimacy that we don't usually see in documentaries about public figures, because they're very protective of their image, and they're very protective of, they don't want to show that, talk about terrible things that happened to them. They don't want to talk about mistakes that they made. They don't want to show that vulnerability. And so I think that's one of the things that really strikes people when they see this film is that openness of hers. And I think it makes them fall in love with her. And, you realize that actually people will fall in love with these documentary subjects much more if they are more human and vulnerable, and if they're protecting their image less than what they usually do.
Yeah, it comes across as very, very honest, of course, like you say. So there's no PR, there's no publicists. And she has those little calls she makes to you saying she can't wait to see you because she feels she can really be herself one-to-one with you. And you just believe her. And, she's very honest with the way she gets dressed, and she's doing her weave and everything like that. She's just very honest, and here she is. I'm no way a music fan anymore, shall we say. I'm more of a movies guy.
Yeah.
The last piece of music I bought was last millennium sometime. But of course, I love that song. Of course, first time I heard was Silence of the Lambs, and it plays over the opening credits, and you're taking straight back going, that song, wow, this is something special. And then we had the video, and she was such a beauty. She was so striking. She really was. And like, until her passing, she was still an attractive woman. The documentary itself turned out to be a what if, or if only. You think maybe if she hadn't stuck to her guns so much, and maybe gone down the Dionne Warwick or Aretha route and not stuck to her guns to be a rock goddess, things could turn out differently, do you think, for her?
Maybe. I mean, I think one of the reasons the music industry didn't, appreciate her, give her a record deal in the US or the UK, part of it definitely was that she was working in these genres of music that are more white, considered more white, especially in the 80s, early 90s, like new wave and hard rock and stuff. I mean, I do think it's it was ridiculous too, because like African American singers invented rock and roll. The first Rolling Stones record was all them doing covers of African American songs from the States. And but I think, the 80s, as we know, were a time that, there was a lot of, it was a time of like people were superficial, materialistic, especially. And so I think it was a combination of the genres of music that she was working with, and also, her appearance. She was 6 feet tall. She was a large woman. She wasn't Whitney Houston. She wasn't, like skinny, traditionally. I mean, I think, as you say, she was incredibly gorgeous, but she wasn't a traditionally model-like,
She's not a magazine cover girl.
Yeah. And, and I think you look at other singers from that time also, like Debbie Harry, and, there were like these very petite and, more conventionally beautiful front women. So I think, it was a combination of both of those things.
Yeah, the music industry missed out for sure. Let's talk about the documentary. Can we say the documentary itself wouldn't have happened if you hadn't got in that taxi that one miraculous time with her?
Definitely, yeah. Because I mean, she was missing. She was underground. She had been for 25 years. Nobody knew where she was, including her old bandmates and best friends. And so if I hadn't gotten into the car and recognized her, and we hadn't and given her my number, and she hadn't called me the next day and stuff, there was a few clues. I mean, one of them was earlier in 2019. A writer for Dazed and Confused magazine had tried to find her. Her real name was Diane Lucky, and they said, oh, there's a Diane Lucky listed as living in Staten Island. And they had gone to this house to see if she was there, and a man came out and said, no, she doesn't live here. That it was her husband, but they didn't know that. She didn't want to be found, especially not by someone who's just knocking on her door. So I'd read that, and then when she picked me up in her car service, her GPS wasn't working, and she started going completely the wrong way, and told me like, oh, sorry, I just don't know which way to go because I live in Staten Island. I was going from Brooklyn to Manhattan. So that was one of the clues. Another one was, she had a whole CD collection and she was listening to this Neil Young record Harvest, which, a lot of times if you get in a taxi or an Uber or whatever, drivers listening to the radio, they don't usually have their own CD collection. So that immediately let me know, like, okay, this is a woman who really cares about music, And, and she was the right demographic. She was African-American woman, maybe late 50s at the time. And I knew that she'd been a taxi driver in the 80s. And, it wasn't inconceivable that she was doing that again. So those were sort of the clues. Yeah.
Yeah. And you say she called you straight away, so the day after, you say. And
the next morning. Yeah.
Next morning, wow. And how quickly after that did camera start rolling?
So we met for lunch, and, I told her I was a filmmaker because at that point she didn't even know that. And we started talking a bit about her past, and we started filming. I guess it was probably like 2 or 3 weeks later. Yeah. She wanted to like clean her house, and, I think she had to pare a little bit, for, it'd been 25 years. So she, her return to like the public eye and the camera,
Yeah. And you mentioned her husband as well. What a sweet gent. And of course, her son.
Yeah.
Did you play with how quickly or late in the documentary they would be introduced? Because I was a little bit surprised, to be honest, that he was married and had a son, James, and of course, he's from college, everything like that. How long did it take for you to think, okay, let's drop them in right about here? And unfortunately, it's about 15, 20, 10 minutes towards the end, we get the bad news.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wound up doing everything sort of in chronological order, other than the beginning, where I'm introducing who she was and what she did, and her disappearance, and then sort of tell the story of how I met her, and then, then she takes over and sort of tells her story. Originally the film was going to end with her comeback concert, her return to the stage after 30 years with her old bandmates from England. So originally the structure was going to be more like cutting back and forth between the past and the present, and sort of moving towards her return to the stage, at the same time moving towards revealing why she had disappeared. But when she passed away, I sort of rethought the structure, and obviously that wasn't going to happen anymore. So I made it a little more about my relationship with her and a little more chronological. Yeah.
That's an incredibly heartfelt ending as well, because it's sort of hit me, because my mother's been through that similar operation, the hip replacements. Of course, my mother is a different demographic, of course. So I can imagine, of course, James brings it up, that malpractice. And again, is a what if. But you're taking the documentary on tour, if you like.
Mhm.
New York, Toronto. Would this have been a similar tour had Diane lived, and she would have taken the stage before, maybe had a Q&A session? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be bigger if she was still with us. I think, she would be with me, doing all the press, promoting the film, traveling with it, going to festivals, doing concerts, So, her passing away, in addition to me losing someone who'd become a very close friend, which was obviously the worst part of it, it was also bad for the film because we weren't done filming, and, I do take solace in the fact that she knew the film was happening. She got to see some of the footage. She knew there was going to be a record, the soundtrack. So, her final years, the 3 years that we were working together, the last 3 years of her life, like, she was full of hope and dreams and excitement, for the future. And when she did pass away, it was very sort of unexpected and sudden. So I like to think she wasn't really aware that was happening either, and that, And I like to think that she's aware of what's happening now, from somehow. She was a very spiritual woman, so who, grew up singing in Baptist churches and very religious family. So
Yeah, of course, where she found her voice was her church choir, which is an awesome story. That's awesome. So I just want to confirm, is it being released? Because I did read that the film coincides with an album being released. Is that still happening? Is it still, will it be?
yeah, the album was released on February 19th, February 21st, sorry, and by Sacred Bones Records. And yeah, it's available now, and I think it's going to be kind of like a Searching for Sugarman thing, where people are going to watch the movie and then they'll hopefully buy the record, which has all 23 songs from the movie on it. It's sort of the official soundtrack. Yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome news. And that can be her legacy as well. Thank you so much for your time, Ev. It's been really nice meeting you, and good luck with the tour. And I hope we can bring you back to the world where she belongs.
Okay. And yeah, if anyone wants to find out about screenings and the theatrical runs, at goodbyehorsesmovie.com.
Goodbyehorsesmovie.com it is, and we'll put a link and everything on our articles, our podcast, on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Glenn.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
When you know somebody's race, what do you know? Virtually nothing.
Who gets to be American? What counts as American? And country that is sort of slipping and burning and volatile.
I'm not sure I want to be integrated into a burning house.
Even in the fire, we can't extricate ourselves. We're all connected in the meanwhile.
I wasn't given the language to understand the society that I'm living in.
The angel food cake was the white cake, and the devil food cake was the chocolate cake. This is when I knew something was wrong.
This is not a love letter to this country, but to us inside this country. We see us. We love us. We make eye contact and nod to us.
We keep loving this country, and this country does not.
It's good. How are you, ma'am?
I'm very well, Glenn. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so we're talking about Meanwhile. I read a description. I'm just going to read it. I think it's so beautiful. A docu-poem. I just stopped there. I thought, wow, I'm all in already. In 6 verses about artists breathing through chaos. Whoa. Where do we begin? So just tell me what your inspirations were. So we go through roughly an hour and a half. We have 6 different creators, all so individual, also disparate, all really charismatic in their own very different way. You would never put them together in a million years. How did you do that?
That's beautiful. I think of art and artists as the people who hold our vision and our hope, like our ability to imagine change. And as a lifelong activist and artist, I think those are the same thing, that it's really imagining something that doesn't exist and believing it can and that it should and working towards that goal. And so artists have always made up all of my community. In June of 2020, it became very clear that breath was the dominant, both literal and figurative thematic of the time as George Floyd was strangled to death. People were sharing this air that was making some people very sick and many people die. And a very close friend of mine was on her 3rd to 4th year of having emphysema and being homebound, using oxygen to keep herself breathing and alive. And so Jackie and I have worked together a lot, Jacqueline Woodson, who wrote the audio, the narration, the text, and we've worked together in many different ways than just even in our own lives, but we're sort of collaborative beings, but she's very word-based and I'm very image-based. And so we thought, how could we put some of these ideas and conversations that we're having, as well as with all the people in it, because they're all friends and people who are in my community, some many decades old relationships that have evolved along these kinds of conversations. And so she would write, I would send her some footage I shot on my phone. She would write some more. We started cutting it together. We were editing with Mar Trevino throughout, because obviously it's that kind of a film. It didn't have a script. So there was no, he was very much working with us in that collaboration. And then same with Michelle and Degiacello. We would send her scenes and she would record the feelings and the sounds. She kept saying, silence is a sound. And we would really work with this kind of soundscape idea. And so it evolved as a way to kind of make sense of not only that we're here, which is the basis of the breath, but what are we going to do about it given what really exists in real time that, we don't live in nor can imagine or aim for a place of ease, a place of no relations, a place of no stress or tension or homogeneity, a place that is entirely patterns. We need patterns to make sense out of chaos, but we're never going to lose the chaos. And so it was, how do we actually, as Natalie Diaz, I think so beautifully says, I've tried to stay still in the chaos. And I realize that maybe our goal isn't to be at rest. It's more to sort of, I think about those buildings in the Bay Area that are made to flow with the earthquakes, those very tall buildings. Like, how do we embrace the reality of the chaos, which is actually one of the chapter or names of one of the movements, this notion that it really is there. How do we take that into consideration when we are imagining better and when we are imagining utopia or abolition or change or beauty or fairness? Whatever our goals, our fantasies are, how do we get from here to there? And I think it's about embracing the meanwhile.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise you do go a bit crazy. And so you make your own reality. You make your own way of dealing with chaos, whether it be through routine or whether it be through creating or be inspired by the chaos as well that around you.
That's right.
And because one of the lines I loved was just the breathing and the breath you give out creates a circle of fear, and that fear can lead to division. I thought, wow, really haven't changed. I wanted to ask you about that, because obviously we see people in their face mask, and we were reminded here and there that it's 2010. Now we're in 2025. Were you surprised that the documentary has not so become a moment in time, but turned out to be a swing of the pendulum? Because we're with that president again, and we're having those divisions again. Were you surprised that, it's not a time capsule, it's sort of a look back, but also, we're there again? Were you surprised by that?
Oh, wow. That makes me literally almost want to cry. I mean, I think in that sense, I feel like, to me, it just feels even more important if we can say we were doing something and now it proves to be a blueprint for what we need to be doing now, that maybe there were too few of us who understood that way of seeing. It comes up in all the George Floyd was killed in 2020. What's happening now is this idea of them erasing history. So they were erasing people, but now they're saying you can't even know that we erase people, or that trying to totally rewrite the script. And I think we need to be more in contact with each other, that the antidote is actually community and care. And that we could have used, and many did use 5 years ago. But now I think everybody knows, if they want to get through this, that is going to be the way to do it. And we have to meet with each other. We have to look each other in the eyes. We have to listen to each other. We have to love each other and learn how people think and what they imagine can be better. Because what I hate right now is in the news, reasonable people saying, well, I understand why he's doing it. And I do too, but I don't even want to hear that sentence. And then they say, but it's how he's doing it. And I think we actually need to change how we talk about race, how we talk about gender. And we are going to get there. I mean, we were starting to get there, and there is a bit of a pendulum, but that one doesn't work for me so well, because I do feel like it may not be a straight road, but we're on one line, and it is not about reversing course. It's about, I don't like to say it's necessarily forward. I don't think there's a front and a back, but I think we need to think about, we really need to do what we say we believe. Like, if we believe that race doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, that it's made up, we still have to deal with the repercussions of having enforced our entire society through injustices against some people based on their race. So it may be made up, but the repercussions, the legacy, the pain is real. And so how do we acknowledge that without reinforcing that race, means you don't, if you are not a white person, you aren't there on merit, no matter what you're doing, that you are a lesser person, that the only people who represent merit and in their words, like non-DEI is a white guy. They're reinforcing this idea that every leadership position, every media anchor, everybody, every government, every person, the only people we can really trust or believe in or know are smart are going to be white guys. And you see that in these 40 words they just said that you can't say you saw this, on the government websites or in any materials. They said, some obvious ones like gendered male at birth, you're not allowed to say, but you can't say equity. You can't say women. You can't say belonging. You can't say disability. I mean, and they're literally taking those off all the websites so that, we need a way of being in this world, but not of it, as the Jehovah's Witnesses would say. Jackie was raised Jehovah's Witness. So that rings in my ears.
For sure. And I think the two itties, community and creativity. So they're sort of enforcing communities to happen by pushing them together as outsiders or not, like you said, a divine race, whatever. So it's nonsensical. But you have so many different creators that you've found. We had 6. Was there any point you had more or less? Did some people get into the game?
Actually, more in there now. I mean, I did record with a few people, I would say 3, maybe 4 people who didn't actually make it into the end because somehow a couple of them were newer friends. And and we hadn't been in this kind of a dynamic of a conversation for as long, so we weren't maybe using all the same language. That was true in a couple instances, but also it was very important to me that people not describe things and that people not make statements. And you'll notice, I believe, in the entire film, people don't say that things are certain things. They won't explain things. No one ever explains anything. They're just being. They're having, which has been interesting because after the film, some of the screenings, when we do Q&As, people beforehand will say, are there any special questions you'd like me to be sure to ask, to prompt so that you can, and my feeling, the revelation after the very first one was that normally a Q&A, not an interview, I don't count this among them, but normally a Q&A is an opportunity for a filmmaker and an audience to make sure that the message of the film got across. And what clarification do they want? Or what additional information would they want? And I don't feel that there is like a message for the film. I think that all the ways people respond, which are to just start thinking about these ideas, to start thinking about this way of being in the world, to create a community of creativity, that becomes more important for me. And then it's really that I want to hear their thoughts. I want to hear what people took away, what scene sticks with them, or the line you said of fear and division, which is Jackie's line. And then she says derision. And it's also how she says it. But, a line like that comes to somebody, they're all different lines for all the people. And that watch it. I forget even where you started, but what I was answering, but what was your original question that made me?
No, just said because we described as having 6. So it's just 6 verses. Yeah. So speaking on those, yeah.
Yeah. So I think some of them were, one who was a newer friend was really describing their art. And that wasn't going to work. Nobody in the film says, I do this because I had this experience, which was sexist or racist or whatever. Nobody says anything was they don't tell you about stuff. So I wanted artists who I could be in dialogue with, but also I define art very broadly. So I would say all of the people in the film are artists. There's some that are more recognizable, but you'll see there's dancers, singers, poets, painters, sculptors, photographers. But then there's also a gardener, a baker, a photographer, a side poet, not a published poet. That everybody is engaging with the world around them in a way that allows them to create a vision of the world or an experience in the world that wasn't already given to them, that they're building for themselves. And I think in that sense, I mean, the question really that I take from what you're saying is sort of, how did you know it was done? Or when did you know that was enough people? Or how did you decide? And I think it just got to be a point. Jackie at one point said to me, "You're never going to finish this film because you're having so much fun making it." Because I'd be talking with people like this while we were making the film, people I'd met new, or the people who were in it. Or Jackie and I, it was like, that's all we could talk about. But it wasn't this little film. It was these ideas that we've grown up talking to each other about. So I think it was more sort of what was the tipping point of feeling like we'd gotten across enough of our way of seeing, or our belief that there's a need for a new way of seeing.
And what are the reactions? Have they seen the finished piece? Were they surprised that they came across the way they did? They said, "Oh, I'm so artistic. Oh, I'm so talented." Or were like, "Wow, this is beautiful"? What were your reactions?
None of them said that, but I do think they understand how sort of brilliant and not just creative or visionary, but how deeply engaged in an important conversation about healing, transformation, catharsis, more than just only beauty, which is how art often gets spoken about. But we include beauty too. We need that too. But it provides a way, literally a portal. Art is a portal, and that is invaluable, right? Like whether it's in the schools where it allows students to say what they think about something as opposed to just provide an answer. Like art is, when we say we want people to be critical thinkers, I don't think anybody really knows what that means. But what I mean by that is we want people to be able to think for themselves and to have some access, a space to do it, and a language for it. I think we don't we don't use language very well. We don't allow ourselves to learn how to express ourselves. People are like, "Does it look like a horse when I draw it?" It doesn't. When my kids were, I think they change right around 5. But up until then, they will make a painting or a drawing and they will say, "It's a horse." And you're like, "A horse? Where's the horse?" And they point it out. And they're like, "It's a horse." And you're like, "That is a horse." And then like 6 months later, they'll be like, I can't draw. Doesn't look like a horse." And I think it's that we lose, is that ability to say, no, this is what I think, how I feel a horse. This is my understanding of horse. And I think we need to keep that conversation going. And I mean, a lot of the artists, all that can, have been participating in Q&As and stuff. And they say beautiful things and they appreciate each other's work in a way. They're allowed to see each other's work in specific, but also even the genre of work. Like, oh, they understand dance differently because Shamel and Tashrik's ability to create this beautiful masculinity that is about space and heat and not a push and pull that is violent or painful. But I think it allows them to see each other's work. Teresita's stuff at the end about the sky and the horizon and the stars blows my mind every time. And she's just talking. But when I look at her work, that's what I see. That's how I feel it, is what she's saying. Not because she says, this is this size because, and this material is because. And it's more like, what experience is she channeling into that piece that can then be shared with us?
And what's next for you? Do you think there'll be a follow-up in a few years' time? Or are we going a different genre? What's up next for Catherine?
That's interesting. Right now, I'm actually working on a short film that's somewhat related, a little bit in style, but it's related to the archives of Ivy Young, the woman, my friend, who had the breathing tubes, who died of lung cancer a year and a half ago. And she left me all of her archives, her journals, her photographs, her records, her fishing equipment, because we both fish. And I've been working to place her archives. But I also am curious about what an archive means to someone else. Like what it means if we just take paper and say, okay, you never met me, but this is Catherine. And so it's about a woman, a young person who started as an intern at my office and got very involved in the archive of Ivy, and she had never met Ivy. But it became very clear this was a person where an archive became the mentor. And I think that's fascinating. What does Mariah know about Ivy? What is my role in shepherding these materials and this meaning to other people, or keeping this person alive for myself and for others? And what is Ivy's relationship to Mariah, who Ivy never met? So it's a short film, but it has some of these same ideas where I am committed to being as honest as we can be, never putting in a line of me or Mariah or Ivy, because we had so much audio. I videotaped and filmed with and audio taped her so much during our last couple of years together. But I never want someone saying what something means if that doesn't ring true. So it's more like you just keep seeing Mariah learn and me learn and Ivy sort of from above or wherever Ivy is. So that's related in some ways to Meanwhile, but I don't know. A couple of my friends said they didn't think I'd ever make another film after Meanwhile because all my kids are in it. It's like everything I've been thinking about, all my friends are in it. It's felt in a way like that final piece. So I'm glad I've started on this little short so that I know that I can still make other movies.
You still got it. That's great.
I've still
got it. More time, ma'am. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And best of luck with the
so much, Glenn.
And there we have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed those two wonderful interviews. About half as much as I did. I had a great time. I hope you did too. So please, again, share the support for those movies. You can dig them out online. Maybe you can go and see them. Check out your local listings. And again, check out goodbyehorsesmovie.com. And meanwhile, you'll find them all on social media, all on YouTube. If you wanted to catch those trailers, do more research yourself, I really advise them. Please do support these independent movie makers who really do make a difference in the film world. So I will see you again soon for, drumroll, Arnold Kaswarting, The Interviews, Psychos and Zombies. Cliffhanger. I'll see you at the movies.
Are you not entertained?